Good morning. Today I want to speak on the subject of joy in religion. For me, it's been pretty depressing not to get to assemble with my church family on the Lord's Day, one of the greatest joys that I have. And I'm sure that many of you feel the same way. But you know, a lot of people don't enjoy their religion. It seems they have just enough to basically make themselves miserable. They view religion as you do this and you do that, and you got to rule here and you got to rule there, a little bit more here and a little bit more there, and they keep running into these walls where they just can't make it. Will they ever get it right? Will they ever find contentment? Well, I came across a quote, and I've used this probably in too many sermons, but it fits here. And the quote is that all biblical theology can be summed up in two sentences. One, cheer up. You're a lot worse than you think you are. And two, cheer up. God's grace is a lot bigger than you think it is. These two sentences basically summarize the entire Bible and summarize the purpose of the cross. It's not about how good we can become. It's about how good our God is. So we've just made a mess of things thinking that it's more complicated than it really is. So I've titled the message today that life is not so complex as we would like to pretend. And I want to speak about Solomon for a while. You know, Solomon laments that people are born and they die, and the world just keeps on turning. A guy that had experienced everything, and then he cynically observes that there is nothing new under the sun, and that life, in essence, is pretty boring. However, he does say that there are some high points, and that timing really is everything. There's a time for every season under heaven. He brings up that life is God's gift, and it needs to be unwrapped fresh every day. That's how we need to view our days. Unwrap them fresh every time. And then enjoy the good that it brings and celebrate in awe before the Lord. Now, on the matter of our human tendency to think that life is just too complex, Solomon lets us know just how wrong that notion is. He did find that when somebody is trying to find the meaning of life in education or money or gourmet dining or good health or political office or achievements like this, that life is indeed frustrating and unfulfilling. He said it's like chasing the wind. See, we're never satisfied. And when Solomon comes to the end of his life and he sums up everything that he's learned from running down all these dead-end roads that he's traveled, and he's burned out with his experience, he wishes that life could be a do-over for him. But see, it was too late for Solomon, and so he writes, hoping that others would learn from his failures. And he concludes that man simply needs to fear God and keep his commandments, and that's all. That's the whole duty of man. One modern translation puts it like this: the last and final word is this: fear God, do what he tells you, and that's it. See, life's not so complex as we would like to pretend, huh? You know, people can be well known and have all kinds of acquaintances and never really have a friend. Someone can study hard and get into a choice profession and make real contributions to the world and feel his life has been wasted because of some moral failure. Another person may compete and climb the corporate ladder and make it to the top position and die knowing that no one really respects her as a person. You can have sexual encounters with several partners and never be loved. You can be faithful to one person, live in a beautiful home in a great neighborhood, and never experience having a real home. And until we realize that the real meaning of life is our relationship with God through Jesus Christ, our life will continue to frustrate and be a burden to us. Now, Solomon wasn't the only writer in the Bible that had tried to get man to focus on the right thing or the main thing or the real thing. The prophet Isaiah was another guy who fretted over the direction that man was going. And so he speaks to the people of his time about their pride and their fading political power and about their self-indulgent lifestyle, about all the blessings, that they had squandered and the judgment that lay ahead. Isaiah wrote during a time when God was frustrated with his people. They had been so disobedient that God had allowed the kingdom of Israel to be split in half, north and south. And guys like Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel and Obadiah and Hosea, prophet after prophet after prophet, spokesmen of God, they preached and they warned and they cried and they chastised and they pleaded with the people to simply return, fear God, and keep His commandments. That's all. But you know what their reply was? Well, that's nonsense. We're sophisticated enough to know what we're doing, and we don't need any know-it-all preacher or prophet to tell us anything. We need more than that simple message. And so they tell Solomon, who do you think you are to teach us? Who are you to lord over us? We aren't babies to be talked down by you. See, Isaiah's hearers, they're making fun of his warnings. They are mocking him. See, they pretend to be too grown up to listen to such childish stuff. And so Isaiah's response to them comes from Isaiah the 28th chapter. And he says, very well then, with foreign lips and strange tongues, God will speak to this people, to whom he said, this is the resting place, let the weary rest, and this is the place of repose. But they would not listen. So then the word of the Lord to them will become, do and do, do and do, rule on rule, rule on rule, a little here, a little there, so that they will go and fall backward, be injured and snared and captured. He tells them that you'll be responded to in simplistic terms, in baby talk, one syllable at a time. And he would do this through foreign oppressors. They're going to be taken into captivity. Since you people are too sophisticated to grab hold of the rest that I offer, let the weary rest. God will start over with the simple basics and treat you like the babies that you're acting like. I'm going to continue. Therefore, hear the word, you scoffers who rule His people in Jerusalem. You boast that we have entered into a covenant with death. With the grave we've made an agreement. When an overwhelming scourge sweeps by, it cannot touch us, for we have made a lie our refuge and falsehood our hiding place. Here he uses the word scoffers. In the King James Version, the word is scornful. This is probably the strongest word the Bible ever uses for people who refuse to hear the word of God. See, some people don't hear because they lack the opportunity. Others don't hear because, life situations kind of mix up the message in their minds. But there are some who simply scoff. A scoffer is someone who not only won't heed God's message, but who mocks those that do hear, mocks those who pay attention, mocks those who try to embrace the truth. There are a lot of sophisticated and educated people at both extremes. Some that refuse the fundamental teachings of the Bible altogether, and then others who believe that the moral teachings of the Bible are rule on rule, you do this and you do that, as to where the keeping of the letter of the law becomes like a millstone around their neck and makes religion pretty miserable. Again, life is not so complex as we would like to pretend. See, human wisdom is not wiser than God. Human strength is not more effective and divine. We're not as smart or powerful or sophisticated as we might want to believe. Paul addresses this in in 1 Corinthians. He says, but God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. He chose the lowly things of this world and the despised things and the things that are not to nullify the things that are, so that no one may boast before Him. The message of Isaiah 28 is that we pretended that things are a whole lot more complex than they really are. Every generation thinks itself wise and sophisticated. Every culture says it's moved beyond the simplicity of biblical teachings on absolute truths. When in reality, life's pretty simple. Know that God is God, and we are not. So obey Him, and not our own selfish inclinations. One more verse. So this is what the sovereign Lord says. See, I lay a stone in Zion, a tested stone, a precious cornerstone for a sure foundation. The one who trusts will never be dismayed. This tested stone, this solid rock, is Jesus Christ. We don't put our faith or our trust in ourselves or our things, but in Him. The message is plain. It's not all that complex. There's an article I came across that's titled, "Do you know what the secret of life is?" And I've put this in our bulletin a few times and used it in sermons some. But I want to read this article because, again, it fits. It says this: "Value this time in your life, kids, because this is the time in your life when you still have choices, and it goes by so quickly. When you're a teenager, you think you can do anything, and so you do. Your 20s are a blur. Your 30s, you raise your family, you make a little money, and you think to yourself, what happened to my 30s? Your 40s, you grow a little pot belly, you grow another chin. The music starts to get too loud, and one of your old girlfriends from high school becomes a grandmother. Your 50s, you have a minor surgery. You call it a procedure, but it's a surgery. Your 60s, you have major surgery. The music is still loud, but it doesn't matter because you can't hear it anymore. Your 70s, you and the wife retire to Fort Lauderdale. You start eating dinner at 2, lunch around 10, breakfast the night before, and you spend most of your time wandering around malls looking for the ultimate in soft yogurt and muttering, how come the kids don't call? By your 80s, you have a major stroke, and you end up babbling to some Jamaican nurse that your wife can't stand, but who you call mama. I add this just to remind us just how fast this life goes by. I can already relate to most of these scenarios here. Value this time in your life. Every day is a gift from God. Unwrap it afresh every day. Don't take life too seriously where your days aren't enjoyable. Don't let your religion become a burden to you. Jesus tells us to come unto Him, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. See, it's not all that difficult. But I tell you, it only happens in Christ. Make sure you're there. How you get into Christ, the Bible tells us in 2 places. Galatians 3:27 and Romans 6:3 and 4. We're baptized into Christ, we are clothed with Him. When we're baptized into Christ, we're baptized into His death. I encourage you, get into Christ and stay there. Life's not that complex. Amen. That's the message.